Thanks a lot for coming in. Good morning. Happy to be here.
Something about this community appeals to you?
This is a wonderful place to live.
Or Kelowna now, this is Camp Mulgat. And we're joined by Daniel Cameron and Deborah Preston from Interior Health. Thanks so much for coming in. As you know, this whole issue of what we're doing to deal with our homelessness problem is ever present. And the reason I wanted to talk to you is that you hear repeatedly, why aren't there more treatment beds for all of these people who are clearly struggling with addictions? It comes from regular people, and it comes from people who are, in higher positions. So what's the short answer? Why aren't there more treatment beds?
It's a great question, Kent. And I think that, when we look at the challenges that we're facing in our community, there's not one answer, and the answer is a combination of addressing issues around housing and determinants of health, as well as issues related to affordable living, poverty reduction, and then layering on top of it the healthcare system and how we can support people who have the fundamentals of a healthy lifestyle to seek health treatment.
Right.
So when we talk about housing and homelessness, as you know, we are looking at a built for zero or moving towards an absolute zero homelessness, and we've got some work to do.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The zero thing is another question. That seems like a pipe dream to me, but a low number would be good. But sort of to put some nuance into my first question, I'm hearing from you guys, and before this interview, you were explaining to me that you could look at someone who clearly is addicted, and we might want this simple solution of getting them into a bed. But Deborah, you were saying that doesn't necessarily fit the situation for everybody who might have just been housed.
Correct, and I think it's understanding the right solution for the problem, and we're moving to one solution for all problems. And what we need to be looking at, what is the problem? So we've talked about treatment beds for everyone that has an addiction, where someone who has an opiate addiction, opiate agonist therapy may be the best practice and not a treatment bed.
Okay, so for people who don't know exactly what that is is providing them with a less harmful substitute for their drug of choice, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so opiate agonist therapy or those that are associated with medical industry would call it either Suboxone or buprenorphine naloxone or methadone, which has been around for a little bit longer. So what those do is they act as an agonist for opioids and reduce the symptoms of withdrawal. So for somebody who is addicted to opioid, the addiction is both is more physical than it is psychological. So when people don't have the opioids on board that they're accustomed to having, they experience great discomfort and physical symptoms of withdrawal that comes with a lot of cognitive discomfort as well, in terms of cravings and worries and inability to concentrate on other things.
Whereas once they're on this agonist therapy, if they were to start decreasing their use, they wouldn't experience as much of the withdrawal?
Right. Correct. Yeah. So the agonist helps with the withdrawal symptoms, and the Suboxone actually helps as a protective mechanism around the opioid use as well.
So some people are going to look at that and see it as, this is just a Band-Aid when you really need to treat the problem. But I guess it's just that not every person is in the headspace where putting them in a bed would work. Sort of paint me a picture of that, because I don't think some people are ready to accept that.
When we talk about facility-based treatment, or what many people would call a detox bed or an inpatient treatment bed, we know that from an evidence perspective that's not the most effective solution for many people that have an addiction. So with treating folks with addiction, we want to connect with them as an individual and understand the circumstances of their addiction, as well as where they're at in terms of readiness to change. So some people may feel that they're very ready to change, but they actually may not have what they need to go straight into a sort of facility-based treatment.
Right.
And we might start more with sort of exploring through counseling, as well as starting on some addiction group programs and some replacement therapy.
Right. And even that, I take it, and we were talking about this earlier, Deborah, for some people it's just fundamentally getting their lives figured out. And it's like we'll get to the addiction problems later. They need to learn to take care of themselves now that they have a roof over their head.
Yeah, life changes when you have a roof over your head. You're no longer searching for where you're going to go to the bathroom, where am I going to have a shower, brushing my teeth, all of the things that we get up every day and take for granted. I don't search for that. I know that I have that, and once I can have my shower and get my teeth and ready to go, it's much easier to face the day. I'm also not searching for food.
Right. And it seems to me that getting these things figured out is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if these beds did work for everybody. Take someone off the street, fix them, like cure them of their addiction, and then plunk them back on the street again in that alcove? Where?
With none of the skills.
Yeah.
Right. And so what would they would likely just get right back into it.
Yeah, and that's a component of what we're addressing as we build the housing continuum as well as the treatment continuum. So really looking at, what's a prerequisite for someone to have in place to start thinking about treatment. And once we offer them treatment, what do we want to have in place for once they are, as particularly from inpatient or facility-based treatment, what needs to be in place for them to continue to succeed on that path to recovery?
Right.
And we know that housing is necessary
Right.
for that.
So is there a pathway from being a street addict to getting employed and even paying for your own housing that doesn't pass through a treatment bed?
There is, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
I think a lot of people think that this
Yeah.
is going to be a specific requirement. But having said that, I think we would all agree that there are some people for whom it is a good option if they're ready and
Yeah.
suitable.
Yeah.
And we hear that you could wait 6 months to get one. So could we not address that better?
So yes, there is a wait to inpatient facility-based treatment, but I think it's important to be really clear that while people are waiting, there's things in the system that we're doing with them. So we may be exploring the reason for the addiction. We may be working with them for them to do some self-discovery around how they got to where they were in the first place, and also start doing some counseling as well as group therapy and starting on opioid replacement therapy if
Right.
it's appropriate for the person. So we do talk a lot about treatment facilities and opioid replacement therapy, but it's also important to recognize that we have a large population in our community that are struggling with alcohol use disorder,
Right.
of which the path is different. So
Right. I was talking with Alina Turner, one of the leads of the Journey Home program, and she was pointing out that in Alberta, when you build a facility, the supports that go along with it are all part of the same decision making. The different government branches sort of work together, so it's all there. And she's pointing that out at the same time as suggesting that we really need a few more supports around what we're, like maybe the building is getting a little ahead of the supports. Is that a fair criticism?
Well, I think that when we look at some of the new housing that has come on board, there are supports in those facilities.
Are there enough?
So are there enough for life skills? I would say yes, but we often get muddled in the concept of support in terms of support for people to develop life skills and health supports and addiction treatment and recovery supports. So you've been to Heath House and
Yes.
Hearthstone. So when you walk into those facilities, they've got people there 24 hours a day in Hearthstone. They're sort of monitoring the comings and goings
Yes.
of people. And the staff that are in the house are working really closely with the residents to sort of look at a plan for them as an individual in terms of what are your goals, what are we working towards, how do we support you with that. And when those goals include readiness to talk about recovery or treatment for their substance use, then they're reaching out to us if we're not already connected with them from a health perspective, or they're working with the individual to reach out on their own.
Right.
And I think there's an assumption that those supports need to be in that housing complex every day, just waiting, as opposed to they come in when people are ready.
Right.
So it's and I don't know if people understand the difference in that nuance. So when we have the supportive housing reach out, we respond, we go in, and we meet with that person about their needs.
Right. Quite often when they go to put one of these facilities in, this wet facility term gets used, and people sometimes will say, well, we're okay as long as it's not a wet facility. Maybe you could, I don't think that really is an official term, but I think we understand
certainly
what we're
not.
talking
No.
about, that drug use permitted, right? So what do you think about that? Is there a place for both?
Yes, I believe so, and I think that we get really stuck on that concept, because what we're looking to build and what the Journey Home strategy is looking to build as a part of the long-term plan is a full range of housing, so that people who are not yet ready to talk about treatment or enter into a pathway to wellness can still have access to housing and get to a point where perhaps they are ready, and perhaps then through working with the people that live in the facility with them and the workers that are there, they may say, you know what, this isn't the place for me anymore.
Right.
I want to live by myself now.
Yeah.
And they have the skills to do that.
And and I think there are some people who, because their recovery is tenuous, they would rather be in a place where it isn't all around.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the continuum.
Yeah.
So what's the feeling? I mean, I find it can be very discouraging, this whole topic. It's not all, it's pretty depressing at times. But at the same time, we've got all these different levels of government that seem really, driven to try to fix these problems or improve the situation. Do you feel that headway is being made?
I think that we're fortunate to have the focus on it right now. I think that we didn't get here overnight. This is the situation that we're experiencing here in Kelowna and provincially and nationally is the result of several years of social policy that hasn't necessarily focused on housing as a determinant of health.
Right.
So when from a local perspective, I do think that we're very fortunate to have the support from the city for Journey Home. It's certainly helped us understand the root causes of our issues better and to know sort of where to focus our energy and attention as we move forward towards the solutions.
And I think at a policy and operational level, we are working very collaboratively with the city, with BC Housing, with the operators, and in a way that I don't think we did 3 years ago.
Right.
So it is much more intentional, focused on joint initiatives and collaboration.
But when needs sort of arise, when you're looking and saying, we could do better here, when you're having conversations with your higher ups in the ministry, do you feel there's still an atmosphere of being open to maybe increasing expenditures when there's a good case being made?
Yes. I'll speak for my portfolio, which is the mental health and substance use portfolio, and we've had a significant amount of investment, and we've grown our programs quite a bit since the beginning of the overdose crisis. So have we invested in treatment beds? No, but we have invested in developing a spectrum of substance use treatment. And we've actually focused on the area in which the evidence shows us is the most beneficial and is most likely to reduce the risk of overdose and overdose death, as opposed to on the treatment bed. So when locally...
are the treatment beds not part of that spectrum you're
They are,
describing?
yes, they are. But so if you look at a spectrum, this is treatment beds, and this is sort of your intensive 24/7 resource. And we've developed a lot around sort of the entry into treatment. So going back to opioid agonist treatment, we are seeing over double the number of patients that we had a year ago. A year ago, we had, you couldn't walk in the door into the Interior Health Building and say, I'm ready for treatment, what can you do for me? And get treatment within 24 hours. It would take, sometimes up to 2 or 3 weeks.
And now you can.
And now we can.
So really, while it might not be this classic treatment bed that people imagine,
Yeah.
if someone wants help today, they can walk in and get that going.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've developed a lot of resources that are helping to meet people where they're at and establish relationships with healthcare that they've never had the opportunity to have before. So, we talk about our safe injection supervised consumption site, and that in itself has actually moved several people along the path to wellness by just having a safe place for people to engage with a healthcare professional in a meaningful conversation, and then that healthcare professional will connect them with someone who specializes in substance use, and then either start them on agonist therapy, or if they're ready, or engage in conversations around moving along towards wellness.
Fantastic. I so appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.